Mr. Watson here, and in this video we're going to look at the methods of training you can use to improve aerobic capacity. So, let's start with continuous training. This involves steady state, low to moderate intensity work, and it's usually done for a prolonged period of time. Typical exercises involve large muscle groups such as jogging, swimming, cycling, rowing, or aerobic dance. And this stresses the aerobic energy system and slow oxidative muscle fibers. Therefore, it creates an aerobic adaptation to increase the intensity and duration of performance without the associated fatigue. So, continuous training is well used by endurance performers such as triathletes and marathon runners. One of the downsides of this training is overuse injuries are common, especially the greater the distance that you're covering. In stress fractures in the foot, also knee injuries are also common. Just for perspective, a top class international distance runner will typically cover close to 100 miles a week all year round. A great aerobic base can be formed for all sports with this training. However, team players may find training not sport specific or boring due to the intensity staying fairly similar. And as you can see on the screen, the intensity ranges from 60 up to 80%, so it can be done at a low intensity, as I mentioned, and usually for prolonged periods of time, 20 to 80 minutes generally. However, as we've mentioned, with them greater distance athletes, they'll probably be running for longer than that. So a variation of continuous training is fartlek training, otherwise known as speed play. This training is continuous in nature, but the intensity varies throughout. So it's typically a mixture of low to moderate intensity. However, there is interspersed sprints in there. So does involve sprints. So this is more used for games players, as often in a football match there will be times when you're walking, jogging and sprinting. Good thing about fartlek training is you can also change the terrain, such as hill running or beach running. And the recovery periods are active, so it's low intensity recovery periods. So when I've just mentioned there you can walk, that would tend to be an active recovery or a light jog. So this type of training allows both the aerobic and anaerobic systems to be stressed, and it encourages the performers to recover while still performing. So that's a great adaptation to get, and it really makes you efficient as if you can recover while still remaining active at a lower intensity. So like I've said, fartlek training can be used well by team game players who must perform over different intensities but over a longer duration. But it can also be easily modified to suit the demands of individual performers. Okay, now we're going to move on to repetition running. Now this can often get mixed up with interval training because within repetition running there is recovery periods also as well as work. However, with repetition running, you're repeating a set distance several times. So, for example, that might be 400 meters or 800 meters. But it's not just about completing the distance, it's about completing it at a pace, at a race pace, if you like, or just below. So the reason this differs from interval training is that the recovery period is crucial and is much longer in duration. So you'll tend to make sure that you have recovered well before doing the next distance. Okay, so just to summarize that, it would be, for example, your training would be running 5 times 800 meters. Okay, but the recovery is longer. But the key thing there is when you run that 800 meters, it's at a pace as close to race pace as possible. And then we move on to interval training. Now, interval training is very, very flexible and can be modified for most activities to improve aerobic and anaerobic. Now, even though you can go all the way up to high intensity interval training, and that's the example I'll use, this can still improve aerobic capacity even though you're working anaerobically, as it teaches you to recover much more efficiently, similar to fartlek training. So, in order to gain the correct adaptation that you want, because like I said, you can just do this at a lower intensity, there are several variables which can be manipulated, and these are the duration of the work interval, the intensity of the work interval can be changed, the number of repetitions in a set, the number of sets within a session, the duration of recovery. Like I said, that's different in repetition. You'll try to use a lot, where in interval you can have really short recovery intervals, and also the activity during the recovery interval. So similar to fartlek training, it can be an active recovery. So high intensity interval training involved repeated bouts of high intensity work followed by varied recovery times for an overall period of around 20 minutes. Some people go up to 60 minutes, but you really already need to have a good level of fitness to be doing it for that long. And the intensity is usually from 80 to 95% of your heart rate max in the high intensity, so above that aerobic zone. And the duration can be from 5 seconds to 8 minutes. The recovery intervals are around 40 to 50% of your maximum heart rate. That's what you should lower to. This can be modified to varying fitness levels, like I said, because of all these variables which can be manipulated. You can lower the sets, lower the repetitions, increase the rest, lower the duration, lower the intensity. So you can fit it in for other individuals. However, if you're going to go for that short rest and high intensity, you need to be trained. Okay, so that is interval training, and in the next slide I'm just going to show you some examples of what they might look like. So there's what a marathon runner can do. Now I've gone for the lower end, so the aerobic zone, as we know, starts at 70%, but I've gone from that lower end, which burns fat, increases capillarization, and for 40 to 80 minutes. So that would be an example there. You've then got games players within the aerobic and lactate zones, so a varied heart rate max, but a minimum of 55%. Now I've gone from 45 minutes to 90 minutes to cover basketball and football. And like we've said, it improves aerobic and anaerobic systems. Repetition running, I've gone above the aerobic zone into that lactate threshold, 5 times 400 meters, but long rests in between. This will improve your lactate buffer and improve the efficiency. And interval, now I've gone for the high intensity. I've gone for 95 to 100% of your heart rate max, and 5 times 3 minutes, so 15 minutes in total of work, but 3 minutes recovery in between. But as you can see, as I'm going for that max heart rate, this would be for a trained middle distance runner. And this will improve oxygen utilization and strengthen the cardiac muscle, i.e. the left ventricle. Okay, so this is methods of training and how they can affect aerobic capacity. Thank you.